If you've been scrolling through endless rack mount options, staring at rows of numbers, and wondering which machine actually delivers on the promises, you're not alone. I've spent the last couple of weeks testing a few mid-range rack servers for a home lab and a small creative studio, and I kept circling back to this one because the hype around its quiet claim kept popping up in forums. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What I really wanted to find out was whether the specs translate into a machine that stays cool in a cramped 2U space, runs the apps I need without constantly throttling, and actually justifies its price tag. First off, the biggest hesitation most buyers have with a 2U workstation is noise. A lot of rack servers are built for data centers, where the hum of fans is just background static. In a home office or a small studio, that noise can become a distraction. The quiet rack mount computer lives up to its name. The fan profile is tuned to keep the chassis at a comfortable volume, even when the CPU is pushing close to its boost ceiling. I ran a few 3D rendering sessions in Blender and streamed some 1080p video from OBS at the same time. The fan stayed in the low to mid range, and I could actually hear myself think. That's a big win if you're planning to place the unit under a desk or in a shared workspace where a screaming fan would be a deal breaker. Performance is another point of contention. The AMD Ryzen 7 5700G is a solid A-series chip with integrated graphics, which means you don't need a separate GPU for most productivity workloads. In my tests, compiling a medium-sized C++ project took about the same time as a mid-tier desktop with a comparable CPU, and the integrated Radeon graphics handled lightweight video playback without dropping frames. The 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM gave me plenty of headroom for multitasking running virtual machines, a local Docker swarm, and a few browser tabs full of heavy sites simultaneously didn't cause any noticeable stutter. The 1TB NVMe SSD was already partitioned for the OS and a scratch disk, so load times for the operating system and my Adobe suite were practically instantaneous. If you're looking for raw compute power for gaming, you'll be disappointed, but for CAD, video encoding, and a few light gaming sessions on the integrated graphics, the machine feels more than capable. Now, let's talk about the practical layout. The chassis offers two 3.5-inch drive bays, which is handy if you need to add a large HDD for archival storage or a backup drive without sacrificing the SSD speed. The 4 expansion slots give you room to drop in a dedicated GPU, a high-speed network card, or extra storage controllers later on. I actually installed a low-profile NVIDIA GTX 1650 in one of the slots for a quick test, and the unit handled the added heat without the fan spiking. That flexibility is rare in a 2U form factor. Most comparable units lock you into a fixed configuration, forcing you to buy a whole new box if you need more ports down the line. One hidden trade-off shows up when you think about power and space. The unit comes with an ATX power supply, which is a bit larger than the typical redundant 80-plus units you see in enterprise racks. It fits fine in the chassis, but it means the overall power draw sits around 180 W under load. In a small office setting, that's fine, but if you plan to stack several of these in a single rack without adequate cooling, you'll need to account for the cumulative heat. Also, because it's a micro ATX board, you're limited to a certain number of PCIe lanes. If your workflow eventually requires a dual GPU setup for heavy rendering, you'll quickly hit that ceiling. Who should buy this? If you're a freelance designer, a small business owner who needs a reliable workstation that can double as a lightweight server, or a hobbyist building a home lab for learning virtualization, this is a sweet spot. The quiet operation, decent integrated graphics, and upgrade paths make it a practical choice for anyone who wants the stability of a rack mount system without the noise of a typical data center server. It also shines for people who already have a rack or a shelf and want a compact unit that can sit alongside networking gear without taking up a full rack unit. Who should skip it? If you're a hardcore gamer looking for top-tier frame rates, the integrated graphics will feel limiting, and you'll likely need to add a more powerful GPU, which defeats the quiet premise unless you're ready for louder cooling. Likewise, enterprises that demand redundant power supplies, hot swap drive bays, or enterprise-grade management tools will find the features set a bit light. And if you're planning to run intensive AI workloads that rely heavily on CUDA cores, the lack of a dedicated NVIDIA card out of the box means you'll have to budget extra for that upgrade. The value proposition comes from the combination of decent CPU performance, generous memory, fast storage, and the ability to stay quiet.